Adele doesn't feel like a pop star the way most pop stars do. She feels like a confession that accidentally became a global brand. Her voice has comforted millions of strangers in the darkest parts of their lives, yet the woman behind that voice has spent years trying to survive the weight of being watched, expected, and endlessly interpreted. Because here's the contradiction at the center of Adele's story. She built a career on honesty so raw it sounds like it could ruin her, and the world rewarded her by demanding that honesty forever. Every new era became a test. Not just, is the music good? But, is she still the Adele we miss? The audience didn't just want songs. They wanted proof she still belonged to them. Tonight, we're opening the full timeline. Adele's biography, her family roots, her rise from ordinary London life to global domination, and the moments where fame stopped being a dream and started feeling like a trap. We'll follow the early cracks that shaped her emotional radar, the breakthrough that turned heartbreak into an international language, and the peak years where she became the standard for modern ballads. And then we'll go to the part most stories rush through, the controversies and pressure points, the public backlash moments, the career decisions that angered fans, the personal life under the microscope, the disappearances, the comebacks, the whispers that she was done, followed by the reality that Adele always returns when she's ready, not when the internet demands it. By the end, you won't just know what happened. You'll understand why Adele's story hits differently, because her success isn't built on pretending she's unbreakable. It's built on the opposite, admitting she's human and still walking back onto the stage anyway. So here's the question we're chasing from the first second to the last. Did Adele vanish because she lost the spotlight, or because she finally learned how to control it? Before Adele became a stadium voice, she was a girl learning how to feel things too deeply in a world that didn't always know what to do with sensitivity. She was born Adele Laurie Blue Adkins in London, and her earliest identity wasn't future icon. It was simply a kid growing up with a close bond to her mother, in a home where love existed, but security could still feel fragile. Family shapes the way an artist hears the world. In Adele's case, the foundation was emotional intensity. When a child grows up watching adults struggle, adapt, and keep moving, they learn a quiet lesson. Feelings don't disappear just because life gets busy. They pile up, they sit in your chest. And if you don't give them somewhere to go, they eventually spill out. That's where music enters her story. Not as a hobby, but as a place to store what she couldn't always say out loud. Adele didn't need a flashy persona to be noticed. Her power was simpler, and in some ways more dangerous. She sounded truthful. Even early on, there was something in her tone that felt older than her age, like she'd already lived through heartbreak before she had the vocabulary to name it. And while the world later branded her as the voice of breakups, the deeper truth is that Adele's gift was always empathy. She didn't sing at people. She sang with them. That ability often comes from a childhood where you learn to read emotion fast, where you become observant, where you listen between the words, where you notice the silence in a room. But there's a crack embedded in that kind of sensitivity. You can absorb too much. When you are tuned to everyone's feelings, you can lose track of your own boundaries. That matters later, because fame is the loudest emotion in the room, and it never stops talking. Adele's early environment also gave her something else: relatability. She didn't grow up as a curated celebrity in training. She grew up as someone who looked around and thought, this is real life. And when her voice started turning heads, she didn't chase perfection. She chased honesty. That's why, even at the beginning, she felt less like an industry product and more like a person you could know. Still, the turning point was waiting, because raw talent is one thing. But an opening in the right place, at the right moment, can turn a private voice into a global one. And when Adele finds that opening, she doesn't just step through it. She changes the temperature of pop music. Adele's breakthrough didn't feel like a marketing campaign. It felt like the world stumbling into a voice it didn't know it needed yet. In an era packed with Polish, choreography, and image-first pop, she arrived with something almost old-fashioned: emotion that didn't sound performed. Her talent wasn't built on being untouchable. It was built on being close enough to hurt. Early on, the industry could sense it. Adele had the rare combination that labels spend fortunes trying to manufacture: a voice that carries weight, and a personality that makes the weight feel personal. She didn't need to pretend she had it all figured out. She could laugh mid-interview, be awkward, be blunt, be warm, and then sing like a thunderstorm. The first wave of attention came from the simplest kind of proof. People heard her, and they shared her. Not because a trend told them to, but because the songs sounded like diaries with perfect melodies. Adele's writing style, direct, specific, emotionally unfiltered, made listeners feel like she was telling their story back to them, but with better words than they could find themselves. And then the leap happened, the moment she stopped being a promising new artist and became a name you couldn't avoid. Her songs cut through playlists and radio because they created an immediate atmosphere. You didn't just hear an Adele track, you entered it. The heartbreak felt textured. The longing felt cinematic. Even the quiet moments carried tension, like she was holding back tears you could hear but not see. What truly separated Adele, though, was the contrast. She didn't sell fantasy, she sold truth. While pop culture often rewards escape, Adele offered confrontation, the reality of love ending, the shame of begging someone to stay, the rage of realizing you were not chosen. Those themes were universal, and her voice made them feel inevitable. With the breakthrough came the first real shift in her life. Anonymity started vanishing. Suddenly, Adele wasn't just writing about emotions, she was becoming a symbol of them. Fans didn't just like the music, they depended on it. And dependence is heavy, because it turns art into expectation. But in the beginning, the success still felt pure. It felt earned. It felt like a rare case where the biggest thing in the room was the voice, not the spectacle. Adele was rising not because she fit the pop star mold, but because she shattered it. And once that mold was broken, the next chapter became unavoidable. If the world had fallen in love with the honesty, what would happen when Adele's life became too complicated to keep singing it the same way? When Adele hit her peak, it didn't feel like a normal rise. It felt like gravity, the kind of cultural pull that drags everyone into the same moment. Fans, critics, casual listeners, even people who claim they don't care about pop music. Her biggest eras weren't just successful, they were events. Release nights became rituals. Audio played her songs like public announcements. And suddenly, heartbreak wasn't just personal anymore, it was global. This is where Adele stopped being an artist people admired and became the standard people measured others against. She proved something the industry had quietly forgotten. You could dominate the modern charts without chasing constant trends. You could build an empire on vocals, storytelling, and timing, on the patience to let a song breathe instead of forcing it to sprint. Her impact wasn't only commercial, it was emotional architecture. Adele's music became the background of breakups, weddings, late-night drives, and private crying sessions people would never admit to publicly. She didn't just make listeners feel seen, she made them feel forgiven for feeling too much. And in a culture obsessed with appearing unbothered, that kind of vulnerability was revolutionary. At the same time, her public persona made her even more powerful. Adele didn't present herself like a distant goddess. She came across like a real person who happened to be extraordinary. She joked, cursed, rambled, admitted insecurity, and laughed at her own fame. That relatability created trust, and trust is rare in celebrity culture. It's also dangerous, because it makes audiences believe they know you. And that's the hidden tension of Adele's empire. The more loved she became, the less freedom she had to be anything other than what people expected. When your brand is honesty, the world starts demanding constant access to your honesty. Fans begin to treat your next chapter like a continuation of their own story. The industry begins to depend on you to save music whenever it feels shallow. Even awards and praise become pressure because they quietly say, "Don't disappoint us." This is where the cracks begin forming under the glamour. Not because Adele wasn't talented enough to stay at the top, but because living at the top means being watched from every angle. Her body, her relationships, her choices, her silence, all of it became content. And the more intensely the world observed her, the harder it became to keep the one thing she needed to create: privacy. Adele's peak was not just a victory lap. It was a transformation into a public symbol. She represented real music. She represented real emotion. She represented the rare superstar who didn't feel manufactured. But symbols are not allowed to have messy human seasons. When a symbol changes, people panic, they argue, they demand explanations. And that's exactly what happens next. Because the moment Adele tried to protect her life and control her pace, the internet did what it always does. It turned her humanity into controversy. Adele's controversies were never the wild celebrity kind. They were sharper than that, because they grew out of expectations. When the world falls in love with you for being authentic, it starts demanding authenticity on schedule. And the moment you don't deliver on time, people don't just feel disappointed, they feel betrayed. 1. Public backlash. When a symbol becomes a target. At Adele's scale, even small moments can become culture wars. A look, a costume choice, an offhand comment. Anything can be framed as proof that you've changed, or proof that you never deserved the love in the first place. The backlash machine doesn't care that you're human. It cares that you're famous. And Adele's image has always been complicated because people project onto her. She's been treated like a voice of the everyday person, which sounds like a compliment until you realize it comes with invisible rules. Don't become too glamorous. Don't become too distant. Don't stop being the version of you we first met. The second her appearance or presentation shifts, some fans celebrate growth, while others treat it like betrayal. That split is how backlash starts. Because the public is rarely reacting to the truth. They're reacting to their own attachment. 2. Career controversies. When decisions collide with fan entitlement, the most explosive career controversies tend to happen when live shows are involved, because concerts aren't just products, they're promises. When a major performance is delayed, changed, or canceled, fans don't experience it like a scheduling issue. They experience it like heartbreak. Adele has faced moments where career decisions, timing, production, pacing, or sudden changes triggered intense public anger. And what makes this layer so brutal is that it pits two truths against each other. Fans spent money and planned their lives, and the artist is also a human being with limits, standards, and mental health. The internet often refuses to hold both truths at once. It demands a villain. In those moments, Adele's perfectionism becomes part of the story. Perfectionism can produce legendary work, but it can also make an artist feel like they're never ready, like the world is waiting to judge them for the one thing that isn't flawless. We're personal life, under spotlight when pain becomes public property. Then there's the personal orbit, relationships, marriage, separation, motherhood, and the emotional fallout that follows. Adele's music has always been tied to love and loss, so her real life becomes instant fuel for speculation. People don't just observe. They interpret. They connect dots. They demand details. But the deeper controversy is this. When an artist's pain is profitable, the world begins to feel entitled to it. Adele has had to navigate that cruel reality, being praised for vulnerability, while also being punished for setting boundaries. And here's why this scandal arc matters. It reveals what fame does to a relatable star. The higher Adele rises, the more the public tries to own her choices. Which brings us to the turning point, when Adele stops performing for the crowd's expectations and starts rebuilding her life for her own survival. Adele's turning point isn't a single dramatic collapse. It's a slow realization that the version of Adele the world loved was becoming too heavy to carry every day. When your identity is built on emotional openness, fame can turn that openness into a wound that never closes because people keep touching it. This is the phase where Adele's story stops being about ambition and starts being about boundaries. At her peak, the audience didn't just expect music, they expected access. They wanted her feelings, her explanations, her timeline. But Adele is not a machine, and her life wasn't moving in neat chapters. She was navigating adulthood in real time, private pain, public curiosity, and the pressure of knowing that whatever she did next would be judged not only as a human decision, but as a cultural statement. So she pulled back. And in celebrity culture, pulling back is interpreted as weakness, arrogance, or falling off. The internet doesn't easily accept a star choosing silence. Silence breaks the audience's sense of ownership. But for Adele, silence wasn't disappearance. It was survival. It was the only way to hear herself again without the noise of everyone else's expectations. This is also where the theme of reinvention enters. Adele's reinvention has never been about chasing trends. It's been about reclaiming control over her schedule, her body, her mental health, her public image, and her privacy. When she shifted, people argued about it as if it belonged to them, because her relatability had turned into a kind of public possession. But the truth is simpler. Growth is messy, and healing is not a performance. Her perfectionism, which once helped build flawless eras, also became something she had to manage. Because perfectionism can sabotage joy. It can make you delay, doubt, and punish yourself for not meeting impossible standards. Adele's turning point is the moment she chooses peace over pleasing everyone, even if that choice upsets people who felt entitled to her presence. And that's what makes her story powerful. She didn't vanish. She stepped back long enough to become a person again, so that when she returned, the art could come from a healthier place, not from a bleeding wound the public kept reopening. By this point, Adele is no longer just a voice for heartbreak. She's proof that you can be a global icon and still say, "Not right now, not at that cost." Which sets up the final chapter, legacy. Because once you stop living for the crowd, history starts seeing you more clearly. Adele's legacy is louder than any controversy because it lives in something trends can't fake, emotional truth that ages well. When people talk about the great voices of a generation, her name doesn't appear as a debate, it appears as a certainty. Not because she chased reinvention every season, but because she made timelessness feel modern. Her real impact is not only the charts or awards, it's the way she changed what mainstream pop allowed. Adele proved that a song can move slowly and still conquer the world. That vulnerability can be the strongest branding. That you don't need spectacle to create an event. You need a voice that makes people stop what they're doing and listen like their life depends on it. She also reshaped the relationship between celebrity and honesty. In an era of curated perfection, she made imperfection feel like relief. She laughed at herself. She admitted fear. She spoke like a human being instead of a product. That's why so many listeners felt attached, not just to her music, but to her as a person. And that attachment is exactly what fueled the pressure, the backlash, and the public demands when she slowed down. So, where is Adele now in the culture? Still a headline when she wants to be. Still a standard when others are compared. But also more protected, more deliberate. An artist who understands that disappearing for a while can be part of longevity. She doesn't release music to feed the algorithm. She returns when she has something real to say. And that brings us back to the question we opened with. Adele is the rare superstar who built a global career on honesty, then had to learn how to keep that honesty from consuming her. The world loved her for being relatable, then tested her for changing. The world demanded access, and she answered with boundaries. That's not a scandal. That's growth. So here's the looped ending, the question that keeps this story alive after the video ends. Did Adele step away because she lost the spotlight? Or because she finally learned how to control it? Comment your take. Do you think Adele's greatest strength is her voice, or her courage to protect her peace? And if you want more deep dive celebrity timelines like this, hit subscribe.